The scripture today is very, very familiar. It's the story of the lost son. Jesus continued, there was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to the father, "Father, give me my share of the estate." So he divided his property between them. Not long after that, the younger son got together all he had, set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth on wild living. After he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in that whole country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to be a citizen of that country, who sent him to the fields to feed pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything. When he came to his senses, he said, "How many of my father's hired servants have food to spare? And here I am, starving to death. I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, 'Father, I have sinned. I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants.' So he got up and he went to his father. But while he was still a long way away, the father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. And he ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. The son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his servants, 'Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fatted calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and found.' So they began to celebrate. Meanwhile, the older brother was in the field. When he came near the house, he heard music and dancing. So he called one of the servants and asked him what was going on. 'Your brother has come home,' he replied, 'and your father has killed the fatted calf because he's back safe and sound.' The older brother became angry and refused to go in. So the father went out and pleaded with him. But he answered his father, 'Look, all these years I've been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders, yet you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours, who has squandered your property with prostitutes and come home, you killed the fatted calf for him?' 'My son,' the father said, 'you are always with me and everything I have is yours.' But we had to celebrate and be glad because this brother of yours was dead and now he's alive again. He was lost and he is found." Thanks be to God. This whole chapter of this in Luke 15 is about things that are lost. It's called the lost things. A shepherd lost a sheep and left the others to go and find it. A woman lost a coin, turned on the lights, swept under the bed, and continued to look everywhere before she found it. Then she called others to celebrate with her. I want to say a few things about both of these before I delve into the story of the lost son. People today find it challenging to translate many of the stories, but particularly the story of the lost sheep, into contemporary culture. I know parents who would read this passage and say, "There is no way I would leave the rest of the herd alone to search for one sheep. Why, that's ridiculous. A wild animal could come and destroy the whole rest of the herd just for that lost one." They say that until the lost one is theirs. Then the concern for the others are diminished because it's essential to find their lost one. Our culture tends to prioritize what is best for ourselves and our loved ones. Our concentric circles of care start with ourselves and those we love, and depending on our ability to think bigger or broader, our perspective, we then consider others. That has changed totally in my lifetime and probably in many of the lifetimes of you sitting here today. We used to have missionaries who came once a year and told us about their work and what they did, and we gave money to support what they were doing in places we had never heard of with people we will never know. We did that because God called us to do that. We invested in not only the people far away, but we built schools for kids we did not know. We had Bible school for children we did not know. We went and picked up people's children. We invited other people's children into our home. And because of a personal thing, We did campus ministry with children we would never know because they needed to have support on their campuses when they were there. That's no longer as prevalent as it used to be. The point of this parable is to acknowledge that Jesus teaches us to value everyone. Christianity is not about the majority. That is the role of government. Christianity focuses on seeking out the one who was too foolish, too stubborn, too weak. They lost their way. They were not always on the right path. We cannot simply read a parable, a story in red, and dismiss it as irrelevant just because it doesn't meet up with what we think is relevant. We cannot do that just because it makes us uncomfortable or contradicts our worldview. That is not how the teachings of Jesus operates. They are meant to change us and challenge us, not the other way around. And by the way, multiple shepherds are usually always with a herd, and so the shepherds never left the sheep. The only person who did something courageous was the one that went to look for the lost sheep, because he was all alone in that pursuit, and that took courage. The lost coin tells us a very different story. There is no rescue, nor any other person really affected by her problem. She appears to be a person of limited means who had lost one of her wedding coins. The 10 silver coins constituted her entire wedding dowry. I've never given dowries much of a thought, but in reading up on this, I found that in some cultures, the family pays the man, and in some cultures, the man pays the family. But they were going to lose a valuable laborer in their fields. But in the Jewish tradition, during biblical times, the bride was given 10 coins to keep just in case she was ever widowed or divorced, ensuring that she would have the means to support herself. Therefore, losing 10% of her entire personal wealth was a terrifying prospect. She used every resource at her disposal to find that one coin. She turned on the lamp using oil that probably was expensive, and she may not have had much of. She cleaned her whole house. She swept under things. And then at some point, she saw it reflected in the lamp, in the dust. There was that coin. I don't know if y'all are people who lose things, but I'm ADHD, and that has always been pretty much my way of living life. When Dan and I were first married and we were really poor, and we had gotten a refund on insurance, and it was $365, and I'm just telling you, that was a lot of money. And I couldn't find it. When it came time to deposit it, Dan said, "I'm ready to go deposit that." And I went, I have no idea where it is. I swept, I cleaned, I looked in the cushions, I looked in the car, I did everything, and I could not. And I know people think that God has more important things to do than hear these kind of prayers, but I was saying, if you could just, God, help me retrace where that was. And what kept coming to my mind was the trash can. I think you put it in the trash can. I said to Dan, I think I put it in the trash can. And it was trash day, and there was a bag of trash, and bless his heart, he went through that whole trash can, and it was in the very bottom of that trash bag. And I said, I'm so sorry. He said, well, the only thing I'm going to require is that you have to take this nasty check to the bank. So, I lose things, but I forgive myself because I really want to be understanding of others, because there was great joy. And the best part about this story for me was that she did not celebrate alone. She went and got her friends, because if you've never lost $364 and found it, you have no idea how happy she was. Now we're going to the story about the prodigal son. I want to take a risk right off by telling you that I think both sons were lost. I don't think it was just the one. I don't think it was just the bad boy that we always talk about. But the one who stayed for all his own reasons was also lost. Every family has a system in place. It impacts everyone within that system. So while we spend as much time trying to discern which brother we are, which was always really hard for us girls, and really kind of freeing because we were not one of the brothers, we have got to figure out that our goal is really to be more like the father than either of the brothers. This story is a complicated story for me, and I resisted because it was in the lectionary, and Regina kept saying, are you going to, she didn't keep saying, but she did ask me, and in my head I keep thinking, I've got to give them that thing, but this story is quite painful for me because I lived it in my family almost verbatim. My brother was a troubled soul. Without going too deep, he was my half-brother, but his biological father had nothing to do with him when he was past 2 years old. He made no effort. It turns out that also at the same time, my grandmother, his grandmother, my mother's mother, was saying to him without us knowing it, Ricky, don't expect the girl's father to love you like he does them. You're not his real father. And because of that, he was really a troubled soul. He always felt like an outsider, regardless of what my parents did to reassure him. We lived in a town where my grandfather was the mayor when I was born, but he never felt like he was part of that legacy. The turmoil in him was always present, and his behavior matched his pain. Until the summer he was 16, he dropped out of school. He took everything he owned and left home. He went to South Carolina, which I always thought was odd because he went and stayed with my father's distant relatives in South Carolina. They called to say that he was there and they would keep us posted. He hung out with drunks, wrote bad checks, sold everything he had, and worked day jobs just to eat. I was 14. It was a difficult summer. There were whispers between my parents, phone calls, and constant heaviness. They believed he would probably hoped without hope that he would come home when school started, but he didn't know how to come home. It wasn't bad enough yet. But one night during an early cold snap in late October, all the lights were off in our house and we were all in bed, and the doorbell rang. If you've ever been in a dark house at midnight when the doorbell rings, you know it's probably not good news. We all held our breath, and my daddy went down and opened the door. And there on the porch was my often handsome, well-kept brother, skinny, unkempt, and a pair of worn-out corduroys and a thin t-shirt because he had lost everything he had. Throughout the house, we could hear him say, "Daddy, can I come home?" My daddy replied, "Of course you can, son. We have been waiting for you." From this very experience, I know that Jesus' story of the Father and his Son does not end there. It is not always a happy ending. It is just a beginning of how to be restituted with each other. That's why this story is more than about the Father and it is more about the Father and God's love for us than it is about the brothers. It would take years, if ever, before the balance of power righted itself within the family. But the Father's love is the constant. His love holds up a mirror to both of them. To one, he says, "You are truly and completely and unequivocally forgiven. You do not need to keep proving yourself. You have been restored to this family." While the mirror of love that he held up to the older brother, he said, You did not have to be perfect. I never expected that of you. I would have loved you regardless. You did the right things, and I'm thinking now they were probably for the wrong reason. You were always loved. You never had to learn it. It was always yours. Ironically, it is more challenging to connect with that son who never left than it was the one who went away, hit the lowest point of his life, realized he could not do it alone, then came home to accept his responsibility for breaking that relationship. When I was young, I preached this sermon once, and afterwards I stood at the church door when a member, a father of two of my youth, came through. He rarely spoke to others, but even less frequently to me. I wasn't fond of this man because of the pain I saw in the lives of his children and his wife. So I was quite surprised when he shook my hand and said, "I still believe the older brother got the short end of the stick." I held on to his hand and said, "Yes, sir. Until you understand the concept of grace, you're probably always going to feel that way." Ooh. I don't think I changed him, but it did change my understanding of him. That man had never grown beyond being the older brother. Long ago, he should have matured into the father. And because of that lack of growth, many close to him were still suffering from his stagnation. All three of these stories are about rejoicing. Every one of us has the opportunity to experience great joy, or if you've squandered the opportunity for joy, you can still reclaim it. Our challenge today is to speak a way to find the joy that God offers us through Jesus Christ. When you find it, recognize it, embrace it, allow yourself time to heal from the times that you have not been in a state of joy, from the loss that you have experienced. But then, do not squander it again. Then rejoice with others about the joy that was lost and is now found. Thanks be to God.